Welcome to Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. I'm J.J. Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's show. Today's show is a very special show because it's about the power of communicating with your animals. I have worked with Renee McDuffy for a long time with different various animals, and I know she's not the only animal communicator out there, but she's someone I've met in person and have known for many years. I will tell you that at the end of the show, she gives an email address as well as her phone number for anyone who's interested in working with her. And I will tell you, do not email her. You'll never hear back. Renee is not so great with email. Phone number and texting is her number one way of communicating. You may be able to get a hold of her on Facebook, but again, her phone number and text messages is the best way to reach her if you're interested in a session. And I held this show back just a little bit longer just to make sure everybody was ready for it, because while this show is called Spirit, Purpose, and Energy, some people may not understand the power of communicating with your animals, and that there are people who are clairvoyant and clairaudient and clairsentient and can communicate more than the average person. Although I will encourage you to learn from this session and see if you can start to click into your animal a little bit better, and even your children, because I think a lot of times we project ourselves onto our animals and children and we don't see them as a separate entity, and then we don't click into what information we're getting from them, again, as a separate entity, because we do everything through our own channels, right? So if you've got whatever your frequency and vibration is, that's basically all you can receive from. But I think this show will hopefully inspire you to use meditation, create a visualization, to slow down, to rely on your intuition, to rely on using your body, and help you to better communicate with not only your animals, but your children and maybe even yourself. So enjoy today's show. Today's show, the power of communicating with your animals. I have a treat for you today. We have with us Renee McDuffy. Renee, born with the gift of connecting with animals, has been an animal whisperer for over 30 years, with clients across the U.S. as well as Europe, South America, Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Her unique approach focuses on the heart of the issue, which opens a channel of communication between the animals and their people. This facilitates expansion of the relationship, opening new doors of possibility within this relationship, often lasting a lifetime. I am a client of Renee, and I've really wanted to share with you what she does, since it's a Freedom Friday and it's a spirituality day and law of attraction day and nonverbal communication and intuition and psychic abilities. I thought Renee was the perfect person to share with you for those of you that don't know about an animal whisperer. So Renee, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So first, let's go over the very obvious question that a lot of people are going to have. What is an animal whisperer?
Yeah, that's a really tough question to answer, I'll tell you. A lot of people can relate to the movie called The Animal Whisperer, which stars Robert Redford. This is where the girl and the horse are are struck by a semi-truck, and they both come away with injuries. What Robert Redford's character does in that film is, in addition to working with the horse and rehabilitating the horse physically, he finds a way to reconnect the young girl with the horse and reconnect that relationship, reestablish their communication, and have them both understand that they're both feeling the same fears, anxieties. Fear was the big one, I guess, because of being struck by the truck, but and helps them to come back together in a way that they were both missing by being apart, because they were both afraid of each other, basically, after that accident. So it's a very touching film. What I do not work with the animals hands-on. I don't do that aspect of what Robert Redford's character does. I do work with the communication aspect of it. So if there's an issue in the household between the animal and the human, I bridge that gap of communication between the animals and their people, and I help them to understand what is going on with each other that allows them to reunite and reconnect their relationship in a way that they've never experienced before.
So you and I have known each other for a long time, and I remember a story, and I want you to share with the audience this story, or a story before then, about when you knew. I remember it was something about you were scuba diving, and I believe there was a dolphin that you could hear having a conversation. I believe that's a story I remember from years ago, but I want you to answer the question for those of us, like, how did you know you could do this? And how did you figure it out? And what does it feel like? And, what's it like?
Okay, that's a good question. I'll tell you, as a child, you think everyone knows what you know and can do what you do. And my first realization that I was unique in this way was when I was a little tiny kid, actually sitting on the front yard with my little friend. And across the street, a neighbor's dog was losing his lunch, was vomiting. And I just connected with the dog, and I was sympathetic to it and found out that it had eaten spicy meatballs. And I said to my little friend, I said, boy, those people, they shouldn't feed their dog those spicy meatballs because it just makes his tummy upset. And my little friend looked at me and said, how do you know that dog ate spicy meatballs? And my question back to her was, why don't you know that dog has eaten spicy meatballs? So to me, that was my first realization that not everyone can do what I do.
And so from there, did you go over to the neighbor and tell them, hey, stop feeding your dog spicy meatballs?
Well, as a little kid, I wasn't allowed to cross the street on my own. So no, I didn't go, but not in that moment. But, there were other opportunities to present information to people in a way that they can hear, in a way that they can understand that maybe what they're doing isn't quite the right idea. Maybe we can do something a little bit differently that creates more harmony within the household.
So in a way, would you consider it like a psychic ability or just a nonverbal communication skill?
Well, great question. It's definitely more of a psychic ability. So the main skill that I use is telepathy, and this uses words and sentences that are not spoken. I'm also clairvoyant, meaning I can see pictures and images that the animal sends me or that I send to them. I'm also clairaudient, which means that I can hear sounds other than words, and this allows the animal to communicate, the scraping sound or this squealing sound or something that bothers them that I can then communicate to the people. I'm also clairsentient, which means that I can feel the emotional aspects of what's going on. As an empath, I also have the innate ability to understand the situation from within the animal's perspective while maintaining an objective viewpoint. And then communicating those emotions and whatnot to the human in a way that helps to work out the issue.
So you're with your friend when you're young and you notice that not everyone can do what you can do. And so obviously at that moment it started to develop your awareness of these gifts that you have. And so so give us another story of like what happened next. How did you uncover who helped you to realize you were using telepathy and you were clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient and clairempath, and you're an empath and that you have psychic abilities?
Oh, wow. That probably takes me to friends that I have developed over the years and books that I have read over the years. And, when you're a like-minded, you draw those people to you. And there have been many teachers that are not necessarily known, but have been in my own personal sphere that have pointed out, oh, look, if you're hearing that, then you're clairvoyant. Because I'm not hearing that, or clairaudient rather. Or if you're seeing these things, I'm not seeing these things. Like I would hear music, and I go, wow, where's that music coming from? And my friends would say, I don't hear music. And I go, all right. And no, I'm not crazy. I am hearing that music, and it's beautiful, and I could sing it, or I could hum it, or whatever. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah,
okay.
that's a place to start. So, when did you start doing this and working with the people? So, actually, because you and I had talked about that since you've been doing this since you were born and young with animals. Tell us a little bit about that transition from working with the animals directly to starting to help people with their animals.
Okay, you know what? That's a good. I'm glad you brought that up. I would help my friends out, my friends and family out, and just letting them know what's really going on with their animal. Because they'd say, "Oh gosh, my cat has stopped using her litter box, and I can't figure out why." Well, it may not be that the cat does not like the new litter that she bought, or it does not mean that, there's something. It could be that the animal doesn't feel good. It could be that the cat's not feeling well and is trying to communicate to the person, I need some attention different from what you've been giving me. Or maybe the cat does not like the person's new boy or girlfriend and needs to communicate to their person, this new person that you brought into our household doesn't work out for me for these reasons. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to kick the boy or girlfriend out of your life. We just need to find a way to have it work out for the cat as well.
Okay. And so you just started naturally finding yourself helping your friends and family, and then decided to start doing it as a business, yes?
Yes, developed it into a business, started marketing myself, and yeah, it's been gangbusters ever since.
Do you remember that story that you told years ago about the dolphin? When she scuba diving?
Okay, this might have been the one where the woman was writing a book. She lived in Newport Beach. She was writing a book in her writing room, a lot of her house, but in particular her writing room looked out over the bay, the Newport Beach Bay, and there was a particular dolphin that would come in and communicate with her, or she thought this dolphin was trying to communicate with her, and she wanted to know what the dolphin was saying. So she asked me to speak with this dolphin and ask it what the message was it was trying to convey to her, because she had felt at that point that she was sort of stuck in her writing. The message from the dolphin allowed her to take her writing to a new depth, and expand the book that she was writing beyond what she had originally imagined. And so this dolphin came and revisited her fairly regularly until the book was finished, which was kind of interesting. So our animals, even though they're not domestic, they can still benefit us in some really magical and just fantastic ways.
Now you've had this ability, and have you met other people who have this ability as well over the years?
Yes, in fact, there's a woman that I connected with in San Diego. Her name is Brigitte Noel, and we worked together on a couple of. She helped me with my cat years ago. Sometimes when you do this, you're too close to the picture. And years and years and years ago, my cat was transitioning, and I really wanted her input on what I was hearing from my cat. And so I enrolled her assistance, and we sort of stayed in touch off and on ever since then. And it was really fabulous to see how she worked and how it was different from how I work. Both really great, fantastic approaches to communicating with animals and bridging that link, but very different. What I find different between myself and other people who communicate with animals is I tend to go through the heart with everything, whether it's coming from the animal or going to the animal, whether it's coming from the person or going to the person. I run it through my heart, and I make sure that whoever is sending or receiving the information does it from a loving perspective. This is not about making someone wrong. It's not about making someone else comply to what I want or what the communicator wants, whether it's the animal or the person. It's more about finding common ground where the issue or the misbehavior can be eliminated and the communication is opened and expanded beyond what it had been. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And before today's show, you and I talked about some other, like with the movie that you mentioned with Robert Redford in it, and that I had seen a video on Facebook or YouTube. And actually, for anyone who's interested, you'd have to type in like black leopard, or I think that it's a black leopard named Diablo, I think. And it's a wonderful story with an animal communicator, and sort of you see the difference in this animal and his. So it's a video to sort of strengthen the work that Renee does, that, there are people around the world that also do similar work. And then you get to see the video part of the beginning and the end, and the story of the guy who owns this black leopard and how he was integrating him with other cats. And anyway, it's just all very fascinating for those of you that are still a little skeptical. I wanted to ensure that there are other information you can find online about the work that Renee does, and the gift that she has, and that others have. And of course, everyone's going to work a little bit differently. So the question that comes to mind for me Renee, is in all the work that you've done over the years, both with animals and with people. Do you find that anything that you do is a teachable skill? Is there anything that we can do to develop our own ability to communicate with our animals? I have a story on that, but first I want to get your answer.
Yes, most definitely. This can definitely be taught. I actually believe that we all have the ability to communicate with animals. It's just a matter of whether we are open to it or not. And we all, and what comes with that often is self-doubt. Did I really hear that? I mean, is that really what came from my animal? Well, it probably is. I mean, if you're sitting on the sofa watching TV or you're out in the yard and all of a sudden you have this thought, I'm going to go give my dog a treat. Well, you might realize that when you go into the kitchen over to that pantry where the treats are kept, your dog's probably already sitting there waiting for you. Now, did the dog communicate that to you, or did you communicate that to the dog? Who knows? Who cares? The bottom line is the dog gets a treat. Everybody's happy. And in working with many of my clients, I have witnessed more and more of my clients become more in tune and communicate more effectively with their animals through working with me. It's a very, very rewarding experience. I'll often have clients with whom I've been working for years call me and say, I think this is what I'm hearing. Will you please confirm what I'm hearing? And 9 times out of 10, they're correct, or they're really, really, really close. And for some clients, it starts out that way. Like, I think I am already communicating with my animal. Can you tell me, is this what they're trying to say to me? Am I hearing this correctly? And then I can confirm that for them. And they can realize then that, yes, I am communicating with my animal. They can trust themselves more.
So I want to talk about and share with people who are listening some steps that you would recommend someone can take or things they can do to start that process. And I know that obviously working with you is the best way to start because it's very specific to their animal. But before we do that, we're going to take a break and go to thank our sponsors and come back. And I want you to go over just anything that anyone can start to do to notice how to be, things to practice, ways of being that can help get them into alignment with better communication with their animals and hearing and seeing and intuiting some things on a different level. So, but first I want to tell a short story because I have worked with you several times and most recently in the transition of my cat Doc. And while that was a really beautiful experience to have you help me with, and I do want to eventually on our next show we're going to do is to have you help us do some of the same things that you helped me with because I thought it was really, really powerful. And again, we'll talk about that on another show. But what I did realize, like you just mentioned, that yes, you believe this is a teachable skill and that people can get better. And if they think that they've heard something, because we integrated Kitten into our home and we had done it a couple days before I was leaving for a trip, and then I came back from the trip, and I wanted to give my now oldest cat, Domino, she's 3.5, I wanted to give her some attention because we could feel her being sad and feeling a little bit left out and feeling a little jealous. And so I slept in the guest room with her the very first night I got back, and I locked everybody out, and she came right up on the bed, and she laid with me. And the next day, even though my husband did not like that I was not sleeping in the bed with him, we felt it was important for me to send the message to her that you're our number one, you're important. Actually, you're the reason we got this kitten was so for you to feel like you have companionship and someone to play with when we're not here and because she's very personable. So the next night when I was getting ready to go to bed with her in the guest room, just the two of us. And I said, come on, Domino, let's go. And she walked in the room and I shut the door and I had my flashlight and I shut the light off and I got in bed and I pressed down on the bed, like I tapped on the bed to say, okay, come on up now. And she wasn't coming. And I took the flashlight and I put it on and I looked at her and she was sitting somewhat near the door, not right near the door, but between the door and a piece of furniture. And I literally heard her say, "No, Mom, I'm ready for us to go sleep in the room together, like in the regular bedroom." And so clearly, I'm like, and I went, "Okay." Because I was like, come on, what's going on? And she's like, no, I'm ready to go in the other room. So we left that room and I went into the main bedroom and I got into bed and within seconds she jumped up and it was the first night she slept the entire night, all of us in the same bed.
Yes. Yes.
And but it was the way that she said it that I thought, I had no doubt. And anyway, so I want us, and I know what I've done besides working with you, to get into a space where I feel like I could pick up on that very clearly. So I want you to think of a few things that people can do right now to help to develop that muscle, so to speak, so that they can get better at intuiting and hearing and picking up on that vibration that their animals are giving. But before we do that, we do need to take a break and thank our sponsors. One of my biggest pet peeves in the fitness industry is the oversimplification about changing your diet or adding in exercise. The Invisible Fitness Formula, 5 Secrets to Release Weight and End Body Shame, is not only a book, but a 5-month transformation program. I have created a week-by-week audio and video program to take you step by step through the book. One of the biggest pet peeves I have is to hear people tell me that they really want change. They are tired of the way they've lived and what they're doing, and they really want real change. Well, in order to make real change, you have to have accountability and a plan that addresses all aspects of your life, not just your food temporarily, not just your exercise temporarily, but all of it. The mind, body, soul approach. If you are truly serious about transformation of your mind, body, and soul, I invite you to check out the Invisible Fitness Formula Transformation. Go to invisiblefitness.com. Okay, Renee, so what would you tell someone who wants to get better at communicating with their animal by themselves?
You actually hit the nail right on the head. You listened. With your experience with your cat, you listened and you just trusted. So listening is the hardest part because, we all have a million things going on at once. And sometimes we just get into our routine, we get into our habits, and we don't stop to just listen. If we just take that moment to just put our attention on our animal and pay attention to what is going on, sometimes we hear more than we think we hear. And then trusting that. So if you have a dog that's suddenly chewing your shoes or a horse that's suddenly throwing its riders, and this is not behavior that's characteristic of this animal, you can stop for a minute and just step back. Just step back and take a look at it as an observer's point of view. This is something that you and I worked at or did with your cat, that past dog. Just stand back for a moment, take a look at it from an observer's point of view, and ask the questions. What is going on here that I'm not seeing? What is going on that I need to know about here? And just soften your listening. So it's not like something you're necessarily going to hear in your ears. This is something you're going to hear in your heart, something you're going to hear as perhaps an intuition, and then go with that. So if it's the horse that's throwing the riders, I actually had a client whose horse was champion show horse, won many, many ribbons, was well known on the circuit, suddenly started throwing the riders. Well, you can't have this. You can't have a show horse. And what the horse wanted was a vacation. Horse wanted to go out to pasture for a few months. And the person actually heard it, but heard it in sort of a spiteful sort of way. So when she called me, she said, "This horse is really making me frustrated, and I'm getting really angry because my granddaughter is the one who's the rider. And if he throws her one more time, this is, I just don't think I can do this. And what if he throws her into a pole fence? Then she could really, break her back or have some other sort of injuries." And she said, "I'm getting to the point where I'm so frustrated with this horse, I just want to send him out to pasture." And I said, "Well, funny thing, that's exactly what he wants. He wants a vacation. So send him out to pasture." So she did. When she brought him back after a couple of months, he was happy to work again. He loved his job. He loved being a show horse. He loved the accolades and performing for an audience. And after that short vacation, he no longer threw his riders. So stopping to listen and pay attention to what's going on. The second step is trusting. Trusting that what you're hearing truly is what is going on. And so this woman could have just sent him to pasture to see if that would help. And instead, she called me for confirmation, which is perfectly fine. I'm happy to do that. So I guess that if that answers your question, step 1, take a moment, step back, listen. Step 2, trust. And then step 3, of course, is to take the action of what you're hearing. So if it means vacation, if it means a different litter in the litter box or whatever, then just take that step and see how it turns out.
Renee, are you a Scorpio?
No, I'm a Libra.
Right. Okay. You're air. Of course you're air
I talk
because
a lot.
no. You're a Lib. No, air. Air is, again, it's the thinking headspace. Air. Anyway, it just makes sense for me in terms of, I, for some reason, thought you were Scorpio. Anyway, you being a Libra, I don't know, just puts me into this, like, I would go, oh, yeah, of course you're an air sign because you're picking up on sort of what's in the air, if you will, like a vibration or a psychic frequency that's in the air. And so that
Exactly.
would, yeah, so that actually makes a lot of sense to me. I love that. Yes, just listening and trusting. And you actually added a third step, which was ask, and then step back. Like, what do I need to know? What do I need to learn? Or what is it that you're trying to tell me? And part of why I think I was able to hear Domino so clearly is because of the work we did with Doc and then just the regular, life in terms of being more meditative and being more focused and releasing stress and anxiety, and so that you can clear your head space to receive the pictures and images as well as your heart space. So I think that those just general practices in life about becoming more spiritually centered and grounded and clearer and surrendering and all those words helped me to be available to hear her and not have like my ego or my mind or my thoughts really create something. It just sort of popped in. It was a difference between figuring it out and analyzing it with my mind versus feeling into it and allowing it to generate, like you said, in the heart first, and to just let it sort of come up. And in fact, one more quick little thing I wanted to share with you, and definitely do this on the show so people can hear, that the second gift I got from the work we did with Doc is that I also work with Dr. Lynn Boutrous, who's been on the show many times. She's a medical intuitive. And I went to her to help me heal some of the grief. And what had come up for me is that I could feel Doc so clearly, his energy, unlike any other cat that had transitioned from me. Usually they come in a dream after they transition to sort of let me know they're okay. And I feel a sense of peace. And I'm like, okay. But this wasn't happening with him. And I think that our animals are here to teach us way more than just be our companions, because my cat Doc was definitely a soulmate, and he has actually helped me bridge the gap between that spiritual believing on a cellular level that we really are non-physical and that we really are eternal beings. And because I can think it from my head, but feeling it from my heart is a different thing. And he's been, and so, but I think that's really key for people to be able to communicate with your animals, because if you can't get into that heart space and you're just trying to analyze or figure it out, you're coming with limited tools, right?
Correct. Absolutely correct. And yes, and you did hit the nail on the head with being in a meditative space. And you don't necessarily have to sit on the floor and om or anything like that. You can just close your eyes and let your mind quiet. Forget about what you're hearing with your ears and just listen through your heart. And you're right. Being in a meditative state and being in that quiet space definitely is going to help you to connect more effectively than if you were, thinking about it in your head and analyzing. Definitely.
Yeah, I've allowed myself to feel the love that Doc is now through my heart and even energetically running through my whole body. I've been able to receive him in a different way that's taken a little bit of work, because my mind wants to go back to remembering his physical body, and then that leads me into sadness and grief, and not acknowledging my belief, which I wasn't practicing, because it is really a cellular thing, and being able to differentiate between thinking and remembering versus feeling, and letting the heart and that energy guide the pictures and images and information you get in your head versus the other way around.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So now if somebody is interested in working with you, either to figure out what's going on with their animal or to learn if they are indeed hearing their animal correctly, how could they get in touch with you?
Well, since I'm not really great with social media, and yes, believe it or not, I don't even have a website. I'm working on it, though. I'm putting that into motion. They can certainly contact me via phone. And that is how I do all of my work, actually. I do everything via the phone. But we can go into that a little bit later if you like.
This show is currently being downloaded in over 125 countries. So not only can people who live, in the United States, you do Skype though for the other countries?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's give your phone number first and then your Skype ID so people can look you up.
Okay, phone number is 949 area code 683-1710. 1710. Again, 949-683-1710.
Let's also give them your email address.
Okay. Email is Renee, Renee, the number 4, the letters N as in Nancy, M as in Mary, L as in Larry, S as in Sam, @hotmail.com. That's basically Renee for animals without the vowels @hotmail.com.
And I will have that on the show notes at fittolove.tv on her show notes. So you can come over. You said Hotmail?
It is Hotmail, yep.
Okay. So you can come on over to the site and get all of her contact information, her phone number, her email address, and now your Skype ID is?
Renee, Renee .McDuffy, McDuffy 1.
Okay, so these are ways for you to reach out to Renee for a session. Do you want to give, how you work in terms of pricing, scheduling, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. So yeah, how the sessions work is it does start via phone, usually with a brief conversation with the person to identify, what it is you're hoping to accomplish during the session. Then we'll set a time that works for both of our schedules, and that conversation will again start between myself and the person, where we just do a little question answering. And while I'm speaking with the person, I put a little feeler out to the animal. And at some point, the animal is going to notice, oh, mom or dad is talking about me. Who are they talking to? They'll put a little feeler out to me. Our feelers will meet up, and I'll just ask them to just set aside for a minute. Then when the time is right, I invite the animal into the conversation, and we go from there.
So if you have any other questions for Renee, again, please feel free to email her or call her to set up an appointment. I've been working with her for years. I absolutely recommend her, which is why she's on my show. And I am going to have her back because there's more to cover with this topic, because not only can you learn how to strengthen your communication with your animals, there's all other kinds of information that we can cover just to help you communicate better with other people. But definitely starting with how you communicate and vibrate with your animals, and how to handle transition of their lives, and then some of the common behaviors that animals have and their meaning. So we're definitely going to cover all of that next time. Renee, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on, JJ. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you again for tuning in to Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. If you're inspired and want more, come on over to fittolove.tv and check out our Freedom Fridays, or find us on iTunes. More at Fit to Love, physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness for the happy life you deserve.